Hi everyone, this is Diane Garey from the product marketing team at Venafi, and I'm here to spend a few minutes talking about TLS certificates. Specifically, what are some of the subtle or maybe not so subtle differences in certificates that can affect how you want to factor them into your machine identity management program. And so I want to talk about this from three angles. I want to talk a little bit about differences in TLS certificates themselves and whether that should factor how you think about managing them. Secondly, I want to talk about where those TLS certificates are deployed. And thirdly, I want to think about how the use case or how the certificate is being used, should that affect how we think about making them part of managing this type of machine identity. So if we start on that first point, different types of TLS certificates, what I want to spend a few minutes on here is thinking about public-facing versus private certificates and whether or not that should affect how we think about managing them. Now, public-facing certificates are the ones that I get from a certificate authority or CA, and I deploy them on some sort of public-facing machine, say on a web server that's part of my e-commerce infrastructure from which I sell, goods out to the world. On the other hand, private certificates are ones that go on my internal network. And I would get them because, I've stood up my own private PKI system, or, maybe I'm getting them from, say, like Venafi's zero-touch PKI solution. Now, you might make a case that these TLS certificates on public-facing machines sound a whole lot more important to manage than the ones on my private internal network. I think you make a case for that because, the last thing I want to have happen is a TLS certificate on one of my public-facing web servers expires, and when that TLS certificate expires, it causes an outage on that web server, which means everybody that wants to buy all my great goods isn't able to. I never want to have that kind of situation happen. So certainly I want to prioritize making sure those public-facing TLS certificates are being managed. But now, I think you can make an equal case that it's just as important to make sure any of the TLS certificates running on machines on my internal network, I don't want to have any of them expire and cause an outage either, because whether the outage is, hey, my customers can't do business through my website because it's down, or my employees can't be productive because some part of the internal network is down, I don't want any of those outages to happen. And so I want to make sure that all of those types of certificates, whether they're public facing or private, are all under management. Second thing I said I wanted to touch on was thinking about where a TLS certificate is deployed. TLS certificates are machine identities that are on machines all throughout our networks. And some of those machines or devices, systems, applications are really critical to our business, and others are important, but maybe not quite so critical. So if I'm thinking about managing TLS certificates and making sure they're part of my machine identity management program, but I need to prioritize, certainly I would want to prioritize TLS certificates that are running on the most critical applications and infrastructure and machines first. Say TLS certificates that are on network devices like load balancers, as opposed to TLS certificates that are on something like a print server. All right, third and last thing I wanted to touch on here was the use case, or how is the TLS certificate being used, and should that affect how I think about it from a management perspective? One use case sort of variation is some certificates live or are in existence for a fairly long period of time. That certificate that I get from a certificate authority to put on my public-facing web server, that has a lifespan of 398 days. So I know it's going to be around for a good while before I need to renew it. Whereas other certificates, TLS certificates in my environment, might be much shorter lived. Say I have developers who are getting TLS certificates for applications as they go from development to production. Some of those TLS certificates may only be needed for a short period of time, maybe a few days or a few weeks. And so at first blush, I might think, not so important to have to manage those certificates because they're not really going to be around for that long. But there I would make the case, it is again very important to make sure even those short-lived certificates that my developers are using are managed, so I can make sure they're adhering to my corporate policy. They're coming from certificate authorities that our organizations trust, that we're even aware that they're being used. All right, to sum up, while there are different types of TLS certificates in our environments, and they're deployed in different places and with slightly different use cases. For different reasons, it's important to consider them all in your machine identity management program, even if it means at times you need to prioritize, which ones to bring into the program before others. At Venafi, we have tons of experience working with many organizations to help them effectively do this. To learn more, I encourage you to visit our website, www.venafi.com, download our many resources, or contact us. We'd love to talk to you more about how we can help your organization manage machine identities as well.